One full year had passed since humanity's last transmission. The Galactic Council was beginning to understand the true scope of their loss. The mysterious asteroid attacks had grown more frequent and precise, striking at critical infrastructure. Across the galaxy, with mathematical accuracy, the Vrylon Empire's homeworld suffered 3 direct hits that destroyed their primary manufacturing centers. The Thoraxian military headquarters was obliterated by a single massive asteroid that appeared from nowhere and vanished after impact. Even the peaceful Minthari lost their moon colonies to coordinated strikes that seemed to know exactly where to hit for maximum damage. Council Speaker Vorthak called an emergency session to address the crisis. "These attacks are not random," he announced to the assembled delegates. "Someone or something is targeting our most vital installations with surgical precision." Ambassador Krextal of the Vrylon Empire stood to speak. "Our analysis confirms a pattern. The attacks focus on communication networks, defense installations, and resource production. This is systematic warfare." The Thoraxian representative nodded grimly. "Our military doctrine has no answer for an enemy that strikes from empty space and leaves no trace. Traditional tactics are useless against this threat. But the asteroid attacks were only part of a larger pattern of decay. Without human early warning systems, natural disasters struck without preparation. Solar flares destroyed communication satellites. Meteor storms devastated unprepared colonies. Spatial anomalies swallowed entire trade convoys. The Zathari delegate, a crystal being named Silthara, spoke in a voice that resonated with fear. "Our telepaths report sensing vast emptiness in the direction of human space. It is not death we sense, but something far worse, the complete absence of consciousness itself." Elder Sathanel, the most powerful Zathari telepath, had attempted to reach human space psychically 3 months earlier. He returned in a state of complete catatonic terror, his crystal body cracked and dark. When he finally regained the ability to speak, his words chilled the galactic community. "I felt the universe screaming," Sathanel whispered. "There is something in the darkness between galaxies, something so vast and hungry that it bends reality around itself, and it is coming here." The council dismissed his words as the ravings of a damaged mind. The Zathari were known for their dramatic reactions to psychic disturbances. Surely this was just another example of their oversensitivity. But other species began reporting their own disturbing experiences. Vrylon, deep space monitors detected massive gravitational distortions approaching from multiple directions. Thoraxian long-range sensors recorded energy signatures that made no sense according to known physics. Even the practical trade guilds reported that their best navigators were becoming lost in regions of space that human pilots had mapped decades earlier. Captain Steve Murphy's final transmission came from Jupiter's orbit, where human forces had made their last stand. His message was brief and desperate. 17 ships under my command have been changed. Crews still functional, but no longer human. Implementing Scorched Earth Protocol. Remember us as we were." The transmission cut off in a burst of static and energy that lit up sensors across the solar system. When the interference cleared, the entire human defense fleet had vanished. Not destroyed, simply gone, as if it had never existed. Admiral Frank O'Connor had made the terrible decision to activate humanity's final contingency plan. Rather than allow their ships and crews to be consumed by the quantum parasites, they chose complete destruction. Every human vessel, every space station, every orbital facility was simultaneously destroyed by their own crews. The Galactic Council received automated distress signals from across human space as this mass self-destruction unfolded. Hundreds of human colonies, research stations, and military installations simply ceased to exist within the span of a few hours. "What could drive them to such extremes?" asked Ambassador Piptel of the Minthari. "Humans value life above all else. What threat could be so terrible that they would choose annihilation over surrender?" Nobody had an answer. The Council's best analysts studied the limited data from human space, but found only contradictions and impossibilities, energy readings that suggested battles against enemies that should not exist, sensor logs showing human ships fighting things that occupied multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Michelle Thompson managed to send one final encrypted message before communication was lost forever. Her transmission was heavily corrupted but contained enough information to terrify anyone who understood its implications. "Quantum parasites confirmed," the message read. "Consciousness-consuming entities from outside our reality. Human population 90% compromised. Implementing final solution. If this fails, nothing will stop them from spreading to the entire galaxy." The message ended with coordinates pointing to the edge of the galactic rim, where long-range sensors were beginning to detect something that should not exist. A darkness between the stars that seemed to absorb light, matter, and energy without releasing anything in return. The Vrelon Empire dispatched their most advanced scout ships to investigate these coordinates. Only one returned, its crew babbling about holes in reality and the hunger that devours stars. The ship's computer contained terabytes of data that made no sense. Sensor readings of objects larger than solar systems moving through dimensions that mathematics said were impossible. The surviving scout, Captain Melkara, submitted a report that the Empire immediately classified as top secret. "We encountered structures of impossible size moving through space that should not exist. They were harvesting entire star systems, not for resources but for something else, something that glowed with the light of consciousness itself." The truth was becoming clear to those brave enough to face it. Humanity had not simply gone silent. They had discovered something so dangerous that they chose to fight it alone, rather than risk exposing the rest of the galaxy to the threat. President Karen Mitchell's final decision had been the hardest in human history. Dr. Lisa Harper's research showed that the quantum parasites were merely scouts for something far worse, a galactic hive mind that had already consumed 17 other galaxies. "They harvest consciousness itself," Lisa had explained in her last briefing. "Every thinking being becomes part of their collective, adding their knowledge and memories to an intelligence that spans multiple galaxies. They have been doing this for millions of years." The approaching hive mind possessed the combined knowledge of countless civilizations. It understood every form of technology, every method of warfare, every psychological weakness of thinking species. It was patient, methodical, and absolutely unstoppable using conventional means. Humanity's only hope was Dr. Nancy Chen's desperate plan to link every human consciousness into a single quantum resonance pattern. The process would either disrupt the parasite's quantum coherence or destroy human consciousness entirely. "We need every human mind working together," Nancy had explained. 8 billion people thinking as one, creating a resonance pattern that exists partially outside normal space-time. It might save the galaxy, or it might scatter our consciousness across quantum dimensions forever. The plan required absolute trust and unity at the moment of greatest crisis. Every human being, from newborn babies to centenarians, would have to voluntarily surrender their individual consciousness to the collective effort. Colonel Danny Rivers coordinated the final preparations from a hidden bunker on Mars. His teams had spent months installing quantum resonance amplifiers on every human world. When activated simultaneously, these devices would link every human mind into a single, species-wide consciousness. "This is not just about saving humanity," Danny told his assembled commanders. "If we fail, the hive mind will add our knowledge to their own and use it to consume every other species in the galaxy more efficiently." The quantum parasites had already learned human military tactics, scientific methods, and psychological patterns. They understood how humans thought, how they fought, how they loved. This knowledge made them nearly unstoppable using conventional weapons. But humans possessed one trait that no other species had developed to the same degree: the willingness to sacrifice everything, including their own nature, to protect others. who might not even appreciate the sacrifice. As the final preparations were completed, President Mitchell sent one last message to be broadcast after the plan was implemented. To the galactic community, we did what we had to do. The galaxy lives because we chose to die as we were and be reborn as something else. Remember us as we were, not as what we had to become. The activation signal went out simultaneously to every human world. 8 billion people closed their eyes and opened their minds to the most dangerous experiment in the history of consciousness. The Galactic Council's sensors recorded massive quantum distortions emanating from human space. Energy readings spiked beyond all known scales. Space-time itself seemed to twist and bend around some invisible force that operated according to laws that physics had never encountered. Then, for exactly 1 minute, every quantum disturbance in the galaxy simply stopped. The approaching darkness halted its advance. The asteroid attacks ceased. Even the failing early warning systems suddenly began working again. 3 months had passed since the last human transmission. The Galactic Council had grown used to the quiet. No more interruptions during formal speeches. No more wild suggestions that somehow worked better than traditional methods. No more humans volunteering for dangerous missions that other species avoided. Then the crisis hit. The Kepler sector emergency alarm rang through the council chambers. A massive asteroid field had appeared from nowhere, heading straight for the Minthari homeworld. The peaceful Minthari had no weapons, no shields, no way to protect themselves. Their entire civilization of 12 billion beings faced extinction. In 72 hours, Council Speaker Vorthak called an emergency session. Representatives from all major species gathered to discuss solutions. For the first time in centuries, they had to solve a crisis without human input. The Vrylon Empire spoke first. Ambassador Krextal's metallic voice echoed through the hall. "We can redirect the asteroids using our gravity manipulation technology. The cost will be 50,000 units of rare crystals from the Minthari reserves." The Minthari delegate, a small furry being named Piptel, looked shocked. "But that is our entire crystal supply for the next 100 years. Without those crystals, our technology will fail. Our people will starve." Krextal shrugged with his 4 arms. "The price of survival. Take it or leave it." The Thoraxian representative stood at attention. "The logical solution is evacuation. The Minthari should abandon their world and find a new home. Attachment to planets is inefficient." Piptel's large eyes filled with tears. "Our ancestors are buried in that soil. Our culture, our history, our sacred sites. We cannot just abandon everything." The Thoraxian showed no emotion. "Sentiment is irrelevant. Survival requires adaptation." The Zethari hummed softly among themselves, their crystal bodies glowing with inner light. Finally, their speaker shared their thoughts. "We sense great cosmic significance in this event. Perhaps the asteroid field represents a natural cycle that should not be interrupted." Piptel looked around the council chamber desperately. "Is there no one who will help us? No one who cares about saving our world?" The council fell silent. These were the same solutions they had used for thousands of years. Before humans joined the galactic community, problems were solved through payment, abandonment, or acceptance of fate. It was efficient. It was logical. It was how things had always been done, but something felt wrong. In the past, human delegates would have jumped up by now. They would have suggested using the asteroids as raw materials for space construction, or finding a way to turn the crisis into an opportunity for everyone, or simply volunteering to help because it was the right thing to do. Dr. Pete Williams watched the crisis unfold from his monitoring station at Outpost Sigma 7. He was one of hundreds of humans stationed at remote facilities throughout the galaxy. When the silence order came, they had been cut off from home and from each other. Pete's small team consisted of 5 Marines and 3 scientists. Their job was to monitor deep space for unusual activities. For the past 3 months, their sensors had detected increasingly strange readings from the void between galaxies. Something was approaching. Something massive that bent space and time around itself. The reading suggested an object larger than most solar systems, moving at impossible speeds through dimensions that should not exist. "Sir, you need to see this," called out Dr. Amy Rodriguez, the team's quantum physicist. She had detected the same type of energy signatures that preceded the mysterious asteroid field now threatening the Minthari. Pete studied the data. The pattern was clear to anyone trained in human pattern recognition. The asteroid attacks were not random. They were surgical strikes designed to test galactic defenses and measure response times. Someone or something was probing for weaknesses. "This is not natural," Pete said grimly. "Someone is attacking the galaxy systematically." But they could not warn anyone. The silence order was absolute. No transmissions, no communications, no contact with the galactic community. They could only watch as the galaxy stumbled toward disaster without understanding the real threat. On Earth, President Karen Mitchell sat in the underground bunker that had become humanity's command center. Reports streamed in from across human space. The quantum parasites were spreading faster than projected. 3 more colonies had gone dark in the past week. The creatures were learning. Each attack became more sophisticated, more targeted. They seemed to understand human psychology and were adapting their tactics accordingly. Traditional weapons had no effect on beings that existed partially outside normal space-time. Dr. Nancy Chen, the lead researcher on the Parasite Project, presented her latest findings. "The creatures are not just consuming individual consciousness," she explained. "They are harvesting collective knowledge. Each mind they take makes them smarter, more dangerous." The parasites had started with isolated outposts and small research stations. Now they were targeting population centers and military installations. They were building toward something bigger, something that would require the combined knowledge of billions of minds. "They are preparing for a major assault," Nancy continued. "Not just on humanity, but on every thinking species in the galaxy. We are just the first course." Admiral Frank O'Connor commanded the defense fleet positioned at the edge of the solar system. His ships formed the last line of protection between the parasites and Earth's 8 billion people. But traditional space combat was useless against an enemy that could phase in and out of reality at will. "We need a new approach," Frank told his captains during a secure briefing. "Conventional tactics are failing. These things are not like any enemy we have faced before." The parasites had consumed the crew of the research vessel Explorer last week. The ship still functioned perfectly, still responded to communications, still followed its patrol route. But when Frank's people boarded it, they found crew members going through their daily routines with empty eyes and mechanical movements. "They were alive, but not alive," reported Captain Steve Murphy, who had led the boarding party. "They spoke. When spoken to, followed orders, performed their duties, but there was nothing behind their eyes, no personality, no recognition, no spark of life. The most disturbing part was how normal everything seemed on the surface. The consumed crew members ate meals they could not taste, slept in beds they found no comfort in, and carried out conversations they did not understand. They had become biological machines, technically alive but completely hollow inside." Similar reports came from other infected sites. The parasites did not destroy their victims' bodies or even their basic functions. They simply removed everything that made them individuals. Memories, emotions, creativity, hope, all consumed, leaving behind perfect empty shells. "This is what awaits the entire galaxy if we fail," Frank told his fleet. "Every person, every family, every civilization reduced to walking corpses. We are not just fighting for humanity anymore. We are fighting for the concept of consciousness itself." Back in the council chambers, the Minthari crisis remained unsolved. The asteroid field continued its approach while species representatives debated the finer points of payment schedules and evacuation logistics. The same bureaucratic processes that had maintained galactic peace for millennia were proving inadequate for urgent threats. "Perhaps we should contact the humans," suggested Piptel desperately. "They always have creative solutions for impossible problems." Council Speaker Vorthak shook his massive head. "Human space remains silent. We have tried every communication method available. Either they cannot hear us or they choose not to respond." What the Council did not understand was that humanity was fighting a war on multiple fronts. Every human ship, soldier, and scientist was focused on containing the parasite threat. They had no resources to spare for external crises, no matter how tragic. The humans had also realized something that would terrify the galactic community if they knew. The asteroid attack on the Minthari was not a separate crisis. It was part of the same campaign that had brought the quantum parasites to human space. Dr. Lisa Harper, working in her sealed laboratory on Luna Station, had identified the connection. The asteroids carried trace amounts of quantum residue identical to what the parasites left behind. The attacks were coordinated, designed to weaken galactic defenses before the main assault began. "The parasites are not working alone," Lisa reported to President Mitchell. "They are part of something larger, something that has been planning this invasion for a very long time." The quantum parasites were advanced scouts, sent ahead to map galactic defenses and identify key targets. The asteroid attacks were meant to force species to reveal their military capabilities and response procedures. Every action the Galactic Council took in response to the crisis provided valuable intelligence to an enemy they did not know existed. Humanity faced an impossible choice. They could break silence to warn the galaxy about the real threat, but doing so might spread the parasite infection to species with no defenses against it. Or they could maintain silence and watch the galaxy stumble blindly toward destruction, while fighting a desperate holding action in human space. "We are running out of time," Admiral O'Connor reported during the daily briefing. "The parasites are massing for something big. Our deep space." The Great Council Hall buzzed with hundreds of voices. Aliens from across the galaxy sat in their seats, talking about trade deals and border disputes. The Vrelon Empire delegates clicked their claws on metal desks. The Thoraxian representatives stood perfectly still like statues. The crystal beings called Zathari hummed softly to each other. But something was wrong today. Ambassador Zexhai noticed it first. The human section was empty. All 12 seats sat vacant with no one to fill them. This had never happened before, not once in over 200 years. Humans were known for many things throughout the galaxy. They talked too much. They asked too many questions. They showed up to every meeting, every discussion, every small argument between species. Other aliens often complained that humans were too loud, too curious, too involved in everything. "Where are the humans today?" asked Council Speaker Vorthak. A tall gray being with 4 arms. Nobody knew. The last message from any human had come from Captain Jake Morrison 3 days ago. His transmission was short and strange. "Situation critical. Earth going dark. Tell them we tried to warn them." Then nothing. Complete silence. Many aliens in the council felt relief. The Thoraxians had always hated how humans interrupted their formal speeches with random questions. The Vrylon Empire was tired of humans, blocking their expansion plans with demands for ethical reviews. The wise Zathari had complained that human emotions were too strong and hurt their delicate minds. "Finally, some peace," muttered Ambassador Krex of the Thoraxian hegemony. "We can conduct proper business without their constant interference." Others agreed. For the first time in centuries, they could discuss important matters without humans, jumping up to suggest better ideas or alternative solutions. No more humans asking, "What if we tried this instead?" or "Has anyone considered the other side?" No more passionate speeches about helping smaller species or exploring dangerous regions of space. The council moved on to their regular business. a trade dispute between the Minthari and the Korthax clans, border rights in the Outer Rim, standard diplomatic procedures that had worked for thousands of years before humans arrived. But something felt different. The discussions moved slower than usual. When problems came up, the solutions seemed limited. Before, humans would offer wild ideas that somehow worked. Now everyone stuck to old methods that took longer and cost more. Dr. Lisa Harper had been working on Luna Station when the Silence Order came. She was Earth's top expert on alien life forms. Her research focused on something terrifying that human scouts had found in the empty space between galaxies. Strange creatures that seemed to eat thoughts themselves. These beings were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They did not destroy planets or steal resources. Instead, they consumed consciousness. They would enter a living mind and slowly devour everything that made that person who they were. The body would keep working, keep moving, keep talking. But inside, nothing remained. No personality, no memories, no soul. Lisa had been running tests for months. Her findings showed that these quantum parasites, as she called them, were spreading toward inhabited space. They moved through dimensions that normal sensors could not detect. By the time anyone noticed them, it was already too late. The parasites had already taken 3 human colonies in the outer systems. The people there still walked around, still did their jobs, still spoke when spoken to, but their families could tell something was wrong. Their eyes were empty. Their voices had no emotion. They were like machines wearing human faces. Captain Morrison had been the first to understand the real danger. If these creatures reached the core worlds, they would consume every thinking being in the galaxy. Billions of minds would become empty shells. Entire civilizations would become walking corpses. Earth's leaders had made a terrible choice. Rather than risk spreading the infection to other species, they decided to cut all contact with the galactic community. No transmissions, no trade, no communication of any kind. Humanity would face this threat alone. President Karen Mitchell had given the order herself. "We go dark," she said in her final transmission to the human colonies. "Total communication shut down. If we fail to stop this thing, at least the rest of the galaxy will have time to prepare." Most humans did not understand why they suddenly could not contact their alien friends. Space stations went silent. Trade ships stopped answering calls. Even human tourists visiting other worlds seemed to vanish overnight. The Galactic Council assumed this was some kind of human political problem. Maybe a civil war or economic collapse. Humans were known for their unpredictable behavior. This silence would probably end soon, and they would be back to their normal, loud selves. Days passed. Then weeks. Still no word from human space. The Council's daily business continued, but small problems began to appear. Trade routes that humans had established started having issues. Safety systems that human engineers had installed began failing. Early warning networks that human scientists had built stopped sending updates. The Vrelon Empire tried to take over some human trade routes but found them more dangerous than expected. Human pilots knew shortcuts through asteroid fields that other species considered impossible. Without human guidance, several Vrylon ships were destroyed trying to navigate these paths. The Thoraxians attempted to fill the exploration gap left by human absence. Their first major expedition lost 2 ships to spatial anomalies that human explorers had mapped and avoided for decades. The rigid Thoraxian command structure could not adapt quickly to the chaos of deep space exploration. Even the wise Zathari began to notice something wrong. Their telepathic abilities let them sense the general mood of the galaxy. Where human minds once created a bright, chaotic pattern of thoughts and emotions, now there was only darkness. Some Zathari reported feeling a vast emptiness in the direction of human space, like a hole in the fabric of consciousness itself. Council Speaker Vorthak called for a formal investigation into human silence after 2 months. "This is unprecedented," he announced. We must determine what has happened to our human colleagues. But the investigation teams found nothing. Human space seemed normal from the outside. Their ships still patrolled borders. Their stations still broadcast identification signals. Everything looked fine, except that no one answered when other species tried to make contact. What the Galactic Council did not know was that humanity was fighting a war for the survival of all conscious life. Every human ship, every human soldier, every human scientist was now focused on one goal: stopping the quantum parasites before they could spread beyond human territory. The creatures were intelligent and patient. They had consumed entire galaxies before, leaving behind empty civilizations that looked normal but contained no real life. Earth was just another obstacle to them, another collection of minds to devour before moving on to bigger prizes. But humans were different from other species the parasites had encountered. They were stubborn. They were creative. They were willing to sacrifice everything to protect others, even others who did not appreciate them. And they were about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe was a species with nothing left to lose. Everything you've seen so far looked like fireworks. Zextar cut the tra. The news of Admiral Zextar's defeat reached the Zephyrian capital like a shockwave. For the first time in 3,000 years, an Imperial fleet had been forced to retreat without accomplishing its mission. The humans had not only survived the assault, but had inflicted severe damage on forces that should have overwhelmed them completely. Hierarch Vorthak paced around the council chamber like a caged beast. His scales had darkened to deep purple, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. "How many ships did we lose?" he demanded. 87 vessels destroyed or too damaged to repair," reported Admiral Kethvar. "Over 12,000 Imperial. Personnel killed or missing. The Fifth Fleet barely exists as a fighting force." "And what did we accomplish?" asked Hierarch Melthara. "Nothing," Kethvar admitted. "The humans still control their entire solar system. If anything, our attacks have made them stronger. They captured several of our damaged ships and are studying our technology." The holographic display showed recordings from the battle around Earth. Human fighters moved through space with impossible precision. They used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to learn and adapt during the fight itself. "Their military development has accelerated beyond our projections," Kethvar continued. "Intelligence. Reports indicate they have reverse-engineered our faster-than-light drive systems. They may have working prototypes within months." Vorthak stopped pacing. "That's impossible. It takes centuries to develop FTL technology." "For most species, yes," Kethvar agreed. "But humans approach technology like they approach warfare. They study captured equipment, modify it to fit their needs, and improve upon the original design. Our own weapons are being used against us." Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked in a laboratory that officially did not exist. Around her, teams of scientists and engineers studied pieces of Zephyrian technology recovered from the battle zones. The alien equipment was far more advanced than anything humanity had built, but it was not incomprehensible. "General Kane, the analysis is complete," Elena reported over secure communication. "The alien FTL drives operate on principles we understand, but could never implement, until now." "How long until we have working ships?" Kane asked. 6 months for the first prototype. 12 months for a full production model. The aliens use exotic matter to bend space-time, but we can produce the same effect using antimatter injectors. Our version will actually be more efficient than theirs." Kane felt a surge of excitement. Humanity had always been good at taking existing technology and making it better. Steam engines became jet engines. Radio became television, became internet. Now alien star drives would become human star drives. "What about weapons?" he asked. "Even better news," Elena replied. "Zephyrian energy weapons are based on focused plasma streams. We can build similar devices using our fusion technology. The first prototypes are already being tested. In orbit around Earth, the construction yards worked around the clock building, humanity's first interstellar warships. The new vessels combined human engineering with captured alien technology. They were smaller than Zephyrian cruisers, but faster and more maneuverable. Most importantly, they were designed for the kind of warfare humans understood best. Captain Morrison, recently promoted to admiral, reviewed the specifications for the new Liberty-class destroyers. Each ship carried weapons that could punch through, alien shields. Their hulls were reinforced to survive ramming attacks. Their engines could perform rapid micro-jumps that would allow them to appear inside enemy formations. "How many ships will be ready for the next phase?" Morrison asked his chief engineer. 48 vessels in the first wave," Commander Patricia Summers replied. "Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a Zephyrian cruiser. More importantly, they're designed to work as wolf packs, small groups hunting larger prey." Morrison nodded. The human fleet would never match the aliens in numbers, but they would excel in the kind of warfare that had made humanity dominant on Earth. Quick strikes, hit-and-run tactics, and the willingness to take risks that more civilized species would never consider. Meanwhile, Admiral Kethvar stood before the Zephyrian High Command one final time. His uniform was perfect, his bearing proud, but everyone in the chamber knew he was about to deliver news that would change the Empire forever. "The human technological advancement continues to exceed all projections," he reported. "Our intelligence indicates they have achieved faster-than-light travel. They have also developed weapons comparable to our own. Most significantly, they have begun construction of an interstellar fleet." Hierarch Zeklon leaned forward. "How large a fleet?" "Unknown, but growing rapidly. The humans have converted their entire industrial capacity to military production. Every nation on their planet is contributing resources to the war effort. They are building ships faster than we thought possible. Then we must strike before they become too powerful," Vorthak declared. "Deploy the 12th Armada. 500 ships will end this threat permanently." "Honored Hierarch," Kethvar said carefully, "I must advise against this course of action. The humans are no longer confined to their home system. Our deep space sensors have detected ships moving toward our outer territories." The council chamber fell silent. The idea that humans might launch offensive operations against the Empire had never been considered. For 3 millennia, the Zephyrians had been the aggressors. No species had ever dared to attack Imperial space. "That's impossible," Melthera protested. "They cannot know the locations of our worlds." "They captured navigation data from our damaged ships," Kethvar explained. "The humans now have detailed maps of Imperial space. They know the locations of our major bases, our supply lines, and our industrial centers." The holographic display changed to show the current tactical situation. Red markers indicated human ship movements throughout Imperial territory. The aliens were being hunted in their own space by an enemy they had consistently underestimated. "How many human ships are operating in our territory?" Vorthak asked. "Estimate between 100 and 200 vessels," Kethvar replied. "Small, fast ships that avoid direct confrontation. They strike at isolated outposts and disappear before our fleets can respond." Hierarch Raltek stood up from his chair. "We must recall all available fleets to defend the core worlds. If we do that, we abandon our outer territories," Kethvar pointed out. "The humans will capture our frontier bases and use them as staging areas for deeper penetration." "Then what do you suggest?" Vorthak demanded. "Negotiate," Kethvar said. "Simply. The humans have demonstrated that they cannot be conquered through conventional means. Every attack against them makes them stronger. Every battle teaches them new tactics. If we continue this war, we will lose." The suggestion sent shockwaves through the council chamber. The Zephyrian Empire had never negotiated with inferior species. They conquered or they destroyed, but they never admitted defeat. "You ask us to surrender to primitives?" Melthera's voice rose in outrage. "I ask you to recognize reality," Kethvar replied. The humans are not primitives. They are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. They treat war like a science and improve their methods with every engagement. We, on the other hand, follow the same tactics we have used for centuries. In space around the Zephyrian, industrial world of Kenthalar, Admiral Patricia Summers led the human strike fleet in their first major offensive operation. 12 Liberty-class destroyers appeared from hyperspace in perfect formation. Their target was the orbital shipyard that produced half of the Empire's military vessels. "All ships, this is Summers," she broadcast. "Remember, we're not here to occupy territory. We're here to prove a point. Destroy the shipyard and withdraw immediately." The human ships moved with precision that would have impressed even Zephyrian commanders. They used micro-jumps to appear inside the defensive perimeter, struck their targets with devastating accuracy, and vanished before the orbital defenses could respond effectively. The attack lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the Kenthalar shipyard was a field of debris floating in space. The facility that had taken 50 years to build was destroyed in less than an hour. Most importantly, the human fleet had demonstrated capabilities that terrified Imperial military leaders. They could strike anywhere in Imperial space without warning. They could destroy major installations and escape before reinforcements arrived. The Empire's technological advantage was gone. Admiral Kethvar received the report of the Kenthalar attack while standing in the council chamber. He looked at each hierarch in turn before speaking. "The war has entered a new phase," he announced. "The humans are no longer defending their homeworld. They are hunting us in our own territory. Unless we find a way to stop them, the empire that has existed for 3,000 years will fall to a species that achieved interstellar flight less than 1 year ago." For the first time in Imperial history, the hierarchs had no response. Sensors show massive distortions approaching from multiple directions. This is not J6 months had passed since humanity fell silent. The galactic economy was showing serious problems. Human colonies had been major suppliers of rare metals, advanced computers, and exotic matter. More importantly, humans had served as the galaxy's main explorers, always pushing into unknown regions and finding new trade routes. The Thoraxian hegemony decided to fill the exploration gap. Their rigid military structure seemed perfect for the dangerous work of deep space discovery. They assembled their finest ships and most experienced commanders for a grand expedition into the uncharted Veil Nebula. Commander Zethkar led the mission with typical Thoraxian precision. Everything was planned down to the smallest detail: supply schedules, communication protocols, emergency procedures, all followed ancient military doctrine that had served the hegemony for thousands of years. The expedition lasted exactly 17 hours. The first ship was destroyed when it encountered what human explorers would have immediately recognized as a quantum storm. The violent space-time disturbance tore the vessel apart at the molecular level. The second ship tried to retreat but flew directly into a gravity well that human sensors would have detected from light years away. Commander Zethkar's own flagship barely escaped, limping back to Thoraxian space with half its crew dead and its hull cracked beyond repair. His final report was brief and humiliating. "Nebula unsuitable for exploration. Recommend permanent exclusion zone." What Zethkar did not mention was that human explorer Amy Rodriguez had mapped the entire Veil Nebula 3 years earlier. Her detailed charts showed safe passages through the quantum storms and marked every gravity anomaly. The routes she discovered had cut travel time between the core worlds and the outer rim by 40%. Now those routes were closed. Without human guidance, no species dared attempt the dangerous passages that had become vital trade arteries. Shipping costs doubled overnight. Outer colonies began running short of essential supplies. The Vrillon Empire tried to take control of human trade networks, but found them far more complex than expected. Human merchant pilots knew thousands of shortcuts through asteroid fields, nebulae, and spatial anomalies. These routes looked impossible on paper, but somehow worked when humans used them. Captain Velcris of the Vrelon Trade Authority attempted to follow one of these routes through the Serpent's Eye asteroid field. The passage looked simple enough, just a straight line between 2 points. But the asteroids moved in patterns that defied prediction, shifting through dimensions that normal sensors could not track. Velcris lost 3 ships before giving up. The wreckage joined dozens of other failed attempts by various species to navigate human trade routes. What had once been busy highways of commerce became graveyards of twisted metal. How did they do it? Velcris asked his surviving crew. How did humans navigate spaces that our best computers cannot map? The answer was simple but impossible for most aliens to understand. Human pilots relied on intuition, creativity, and the ability to think their way through problems that had no logical solutions. They made decisions based on gut feelings and educated guesses that somehow proved correct more often than pure mathematics. Meanwhile, the Zathari were experiencing disturbing changes in their telepathic network. Their crystal bodies were natural, receivers for thoughts and emotions across vast distances. Before the silence, human minds had created a bright, chaotic pattern of consciousness that stretched across the galaxy. Now there was only darkness in the direction of human space. Elder Sathnel, the most powerful Zathari telepath, described it as hearing the universe scream in frequencies that should not exist. The younger Zathari were affected most strongly. Their delicate minds could not process the vast emptiness, where human thoughts once blazed like stars. Some fell into catatonic states, their crystal bodies going dark and cold. Others began experiencing visions of approaching darkness that made them shatter their own bodies rather than face what they saw. Something terrible has happened to the humans, Sathnel reported to the Galactic Council. We sense not death, but something far worse. It is as if their consciousness has been consumed. The Council dismissed these reports as Zathari oversensitivity. The crystal beings were known for their dramatic reactions to emotional disturbances. Surely the humans were simply dealing with some internal political crisis that would resolve itself in time. But the problems kept growing. The early warning. Systems that human scientists had installed throughout the Outer Rim were failing one by one. These networks had protected the galaxy from asteroid impacts, stellar flares, and other natural disasters for over a century. Without human maintenance, the systems began shutting down in a cascade of failures. The first major incident occurred in the Tau sector, where a solar flare destroyed 2 inhabited moons because the warning came too late. The Minthari homeworld, still recovering from the asteroid crisis, lost its primary communications satellite to a meteor storm that human sensors would have detected weeks in advance. Admiral Frank O'Connor watched these failures from his command post at Jupiter's orbit. His fleet had been reduced to half its original size as the quantum parasites continued their relentless advance. Every day brought new reports of consumed worlds, empty stations, and crews that moved and spoke but no longer truly lived. The parasites were learning faster than anyone had expected. They adapted to each defensive measure within hours, turning human tactics against their creators. Worse, they seemed to be coordinating their attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. They are not just consuming minds, reported Dr. Nancy Chen during her daily briefing. They are building something with all that stolen consciousness. Every person they take makes them smarter, more organized, more dangerous. Nancy's research had revealed the true horror of the quantum parasites. They did not simply destroy consciousness. They harvested it, storing the memories and knowledge of their victims in some kind of collective intelligence. Each consumed mind added to their understanding of galactic civilization. The parasites now knew human military doctrine, scientific methods, and cultural weaknesses. They understood how humans thought, how they fought, how they loved. This knowledge made them nearly impossible to defeat using conventional methods. Captain Steve Murphy, commanding the defensive line at Europa Station, had discovered just how dangerous the parasites had become. His own infected crew members were still following orders, still maintaining their posts, but they were also quietly sabotaging defensive systems and passing information to the enemy. "We cannot trust anyone who has been exposed," Murphy reported. "The parasites leave the body intact but turn the mind into a weapon against us." The most disturbing discovery was that infected humans retained all their original skills and knowledge. They could still pilot ships, operate weapons, and solve complex problems. But they did so without emotion, without creativity, without the spark of individuality that made them human. Dr. Lisa Harper, still working in her sealed laboratory on Luna Station, had made a breakthrough in understanding the parasites' true nature. They existed in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously present in multiple dimensions. This allowed them to phase through normal matter and energy, making conventional weapons useless. "They are not entirely in our reality," Lisa explained to President Mitchell. "They exist partially in quantum space, partially in dimensions we cannot access. To fight them effectively, we need to find a way to disrupt their quantum coherence." The solution Lisa proposed was both brilliant and terrifying. If humans could synchronize their consciousness across the entire species, they might be able to create a resonance pattern that would either destroy the parasites or force them back into quantum space. But the process would require every human to voluntarily link their minds in a way that had never been attempted. The procedure might save the galaxy, or it might destroy human consciousness entirely, leaving 8 billion empty bodies behind. President Mitchell faced the hardest decision in human history. The quantum parasites were massing for a final assault. That would overwhelm the remaining human defenses. Within weeks, they would break through to the core worlds and begin consuming the entire galactic civilization. "How many people would we need?" Mitchell asked. Lisa's answer was simple and devastating. "Everyone! Every human being in existence, from newborn babies to centenarians. We need the combined consciousness of our entire species to generate enough quantum resonance. The plan would require absolute unity at the moment of greatest crisis. Every human would have to trust their individual consciousness to a collective effort that might save everyone or destroy them all. It was the kind of impossible choice that only humans would even consider." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council continued their slow bureaucratic responses to mounting crises. Trade routes collapsed while they debated proper compensation procedures. Early warning systems failed while they argued about maintenance responsibilities. Entire colonies went dark while they scheduled meetings to discuss the problems. The galaxy was falling apart without human intervention, but no one wanted to admit how much they had depended on the species they had always considered too loud, too chaotic, too involved in everything, Ambas.